So, thank you very much, Andres, for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It seems bright where you are.
It's
Is it
quite
sunny?
sunny. That's why
Yeah.
I've had to close the curtain.
Oh, for the last 2+ days, where I am, southeast, it's been just dull and rainy, like on and off. It's just not. You can feel winter coming,
I
autumn,
guess
winter around
it's
the
like,
corner.
yeah, it's like the Prince song in Raspberry Beret. Overcast days never turn me on.
Yeah, and this is getting darker as well. For the first time
Mm,
in like 2+ months, last week, I actually closed my window because it was cold.
mm.
Because
Yeah,
prior to that, it
actually,
was
I
good.
was just saying I've been doing it the last week because the temperatures have really dropped.
Yeah, I feel it this week, definitely, definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I love conversing with SEOs, and I usually start off asking SEOs how they got into SEO. So, with that said, how did you become an SEO professional?
Right. It's a bit of a story, but here we go.
Everyone has it. That's
So,
why I asked this question, because everyone has an SEO story, and I love hearing about it.
so uh, I went out with some friends in Brighton, of all places, and this was before Brighton SEO ever existed. And one of the friends who were there, who was a friend of a friend, he was telling me about what he does. He had a website that repaired databases on the fly, and he was making money uh, in an automated fashion. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And I said, well, how are you doing this? And he said, oh, I'm top of Google, and this was 20 years ago, and I'm top of Google. I get traffic, and I thought, wow, this is mind blowing. I was working as a qualified accountant at the time, and I thought, yeah, I really need to find out more. And um, the more I prodded and questioned him about how you get to the top of Google, although he gave me answers, I wasn't really satisfied with the answers. So I started going to conferences or meetups like Webmaster World in London, in the pub um, that was in Holborn. And it was the biggest SEO meetup at the time in the world. People were flying over from America, from Hong Kong, God knows, everywhere, all
Mhm.
over Europe. And I thought, oh, right, this is really interesting, and it gave me the dream really of earning loads of passive income in my sleep. So that motivated me to learn SEO. And although money was the initial motivation, I actually found the subject incredibly interesting. So I started learning how to build my own website, how to optimize, and then because my family have restaurants, a local businessman who was a regular customer was I was telling everybody really, but he was quite interested, and he wanted to know more about this SEO malarkey. And then he basically said, look, I'll quit your job. I'll pay you whatever you get paid as an accountant to just create an internet business. So I spent
Mm.
that year um, effectively learning SEO to shortcut my learning experience. I hired a firm from India to actually do the SEO, and I was looking at what they were doing, and it was working. They were
Mm.
lightening the images, they were creating content. We had a page that was used, that was a link directory for reciprocal linking. So this was way, way, way in the early days when these things actually worked, and yeah, that's how I got into SEO.
Awesome. It's always fascinating to hear how people got into SEO, because I think up until very recently. Everyone got into SEO via different means, somehow finding out about it and then delving into it because of there's something that interested them about the industry or channel that made them want to delve in even more. It reminds me of how I got into SEO. Started off just literally spending so much time online researching how to become a music publisher. So I studied music publishing music technology at university, and wanted to be a publisher like Quincy Jones, music publisher, and wanted to find out how to go about doing that online. I was interested in online. There was something about being online that just interested me. And one day I came across what I now know as a display advert that said earn money using MySpace. Of course, this was during the MySpace era. I clicked on it and that introduced me into affiliate marketing. And from then it just somehow landed on SEO. And I think it was keyword research that really did it for me. Because back then, you could literally see the keywords that people are typing in and entering your site with on analytics. Not so much these days, but those were the good old days.
It's so funny you mentioned.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. No, you go.
Well, it's just funny you mentioned keyword research. You just remind me of how I used to do keyword research using the Overture tool.
Yeah.
I mean, I've forgotten about that.
Yeah, so many tools have come and gone. To this day, I think keyword tool, not keyword planner, but keyword tool was such a gold mine for SEO. Because I remember there was over weekends, I used to spend my weekends just like being on Google tools, just Googling or using keywords, just random keywords, and seeing the search volume and being fascinated of how many people are searching for this keyword that I just thought of. And there's something about the way we SEOs connect with people, in that we connect with people online, and there's this pleasure that we get when we see the amount of traffic that's generated into a site because of the work that we've done. That's, in a weird way, that's the way that we connect with people, even though it's distant because it's online.
Well, yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, because nobody's looking over our shoulder when we're using a search engine. If you think about it, keywords reveal our truest desire, and it's an insight into a person's soul. So, I do find the keyword research aspect. So when you think about it in the overall SEO workflow, everything stems and extrapolates from keywords. If you use the wrong keywords, pretty much all of your SEO campaign and performance adds no value to whoever you're doing it for, because the keywords is all about the targeting, who you're trying to attract and what it is you're trying to give them. So if you get that wrong, then obviously it's a lot of wasted resource further down the line.
Yeah, I agree. The power of keyword research. I think that till this day, I don't think clients understand the value of keywords as much as they should. They see it almost in terms of keywords and rankings, and you attract this keyword, we get this ranking, and we get traffic from it, but they don't really delve into the whole intent and the meaning behind keywords. And that, in the early days, that's what really, in fact, to this day, that's what fascinates me with keywords.
I think we, as humans, we have a tendency to jump into solutions without understanding the core problem or the fabric of the problem. And without understanding the fabric, it's very difficult to not be tactical. Let's try this. Let's write this content. Let's go and change this part of the site. And I find a lot of businesses that do behave that way or conduct their SEO that way end up being quite dissatisfied with their results. Whereas if they just took the time to look at the keywords, look at the competitive landscape, then you have that really holistic view of what's going on, what's in the landscape, and then it's much easier to sort of say, right, well, this is the critical path to actually achieving what we want to achieve in terms of visibility online.
Yeah, completely agree. Within the 3 areas of SEO, would you say you're overall across all 3 on page, off page, technical, or do you focus on a specific pillar?
I think there's a 4th pillar, but you could argue there isn't.
Go for it.
So I think there's the data science side of it.
Yeah.
But then you could just argue that, well, just make all 3 areas data driven, then that's your data science taken care of. But no, I'd say I'm across all 3. I mean, right at the beginning, 20 years ago, it was much easier to be across all 3. You had to be across all 3. Obviously, technical wasn't as advanced as it is now. You've got the mobile CWB aspect. Search engines have refined their ways of interacting and the rules. We didn't have, no follow only came up because of blog comment spam. We didn't have WordPress, so you could do PHP server-side includes. There's a lot of clauses. Canonical tags weren't a thing when I started. Now they are. So there's a lot more. Pagination wasn't around, so there's a lot more things to account for, like schema, that we didn't have when we started SEO. With content, obviously, that's evolved quite a lot. So I've seen the very worst of SEO and seeing how things have evolved, and a lot of the people and the experts that I met and even looked up to when I started out, are not even doing SEO anymore. They've moved on to other things, and I think SEO has gone through different eras. There was the sort of it was almost like before it was like the era of piracy, where you can just build a site and sail the internet waters and make a lot of money. Now it's more like the Royal Navy, where it's a lot more structured, and so this is a very long way of answering your question, but yeah, I've seen the worst of, say, link acquisition, and obviously to stay relevant in the industry and to stay useful to clients and businesses and startups, I've had to evolve and learn, really, and in many ways unlearn what I've learned and relearn new ways of doing things. Now it's all about digital PR. Luckily, I've been fortunate to actually do it and help my clients get links from The Guardian, etc. So, if you're willing to learn and willing to evolve and sometimes unlearn, you can stay relevant, and you can be. I mean, I'm not the best writer in the world, but I do know how to write content that satisfies the user, which is ultimately what it's about. Now, if you give me a tone of voice document, then yes, I will get it written in the brand's tone of voice. But I've written a book, so that gives me some qualification to knowing how to write. But does that make me the best copywriter? No, of course not. I wouldn't even claim that.
Yeah, it's the expansion of SEO. It continues to expand. These days, I think a lot of clients very much have to have all areas of SEO covered, because with the expansion comes difficulty. So SEO is more difficult now than it was 10, 15 plus years ago. And there are clients these days that they think SEO is a specific area based on what they think they need. So for example, let's say a client will look at SEO and say, SEO is all about links. So that's all we need, right? Our SEO is link building. End of story. What do you say to those sort of clients who come to you and you can tell by looking at their site, actually, you might need links, but your technicals aren't up to scratch? How do you break it down to clients that they will need all areas covered?
Yeah, so I guess the first step is to, first of all, just get them to reiterate what it is they want. And naturally, it's visibility on search engines, which means more traffic, more business, in a very oversimplified term. And then I say, okay, right, so this is what you want, and you want it off these guys, the search engines, namely Google. Let me tell you about how Google works. And then I explain how Google works and how, of the three pillars, links is just one part of the equation. Even though it's a major part of the equation, it really is just one part. And then and by explaining how search engines work and how links are just one part of the equation, hopefully, and in most cases, the penny does drop. But I do find that those that kind of are oblivious to everything or haven't really heard what I've said or understood, and if they still remain links focused, 9 times out of 10, they are probably extremely budget conscious, and they probably aren't the business for you to work with.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to literally be very black and white like that, because it could be to their detriment. Because you could have a client approach you and want something very specific, which is not good for them, and they don't know it's not good for them. And by the time they realize it, it's already too late, as in the damage has already been done. And you now have to reverse what has already been done and get back to parity somehow before you can progress forward. Manipulation, search engine manipulation is not worth it.
Yeah, I think it's a problem with the industry, but a problem with our culture. In the industry, I've come across clients who want the help, but they want to spend money on SEO, and that's because they've hired consultants. One horror story was where a business told me that they hired a consultant and didn't get any reports during the 6 months that they were engaged.
Wow.
Yeah, I was really surprised. That was pretty extreme though. That's definitely on the extreme end. Other times I've heard. That's the industry side. On the cultural side, we live in an era where Google gives us a lot of answers, but of course we have a certain cognitive bias. So, whether we want answers on a medical condition, on a financial product, or SEO, we Google for answers. But as you know, there's a lot of best practice or generic material on the web. And even if that material on the web is giving you the actual answer, this bias of ours being human, we tend to read what we want to read. So we only see what we want to see. So when we go to an SEO expert or a doctor or a financial advisor, we almost distrust what they say because Google said something else, or a site on Google said something else. And that's unfortunately a cultural thing. And and maybe that's not helped sometimes when you go to the GP surgery and you say your symptoms, and then they go onto Google or some medical database and then effectively Google what it is to help you. And it's just like, aren't you the doctor?
Yeah, we're not short of content these days, and content over the years has evolved. There was a point where content was seen as just text or copy, because that's pretty much, from an SEO point of view, that's what we viewed as content. And there was this theory that you needed 400 words of 400 words of text, or 400 words of copy on a page for it to be considered content. And that's somehow increased over the years. It got up to 7+100. These days, content, there's a plethora of content types, I should say. Videos, text, podcasts, what images, what have you. How do you define content for a client who's unsure of what content is?
How do I define?
Yeah, so a client will say, we've had an agency say to us, we need more content, but we already have content on our site. So what does content mean?
Well, content is a document that satisfies the user query. So what I would tend to do, and I'm sure I'm no different to many other SEOs, is that, for a set of target keywords that have a similar search intent, I would look at the top ranking content and look at the common elements that the top ranking content have, because obviously if the elements are common to the top ranking content, that's obviously the core of what the user wants. Otherwise, these sites or URLs would not be rewarded for providing that content for those core sections. So that's as a minimum. Obviously, that depends on the nature. Like, for example, you're rarely now going to see 400 words on an e-commerce category page. They just have what it is and all the products. And so it really is down to whatever the user wants to see and what will give them what they want.
I completely agree. And that's what these days I very strongly advise clients to focus on the intent rather than keywords and content, because that leads them to thinking of ways to manipulate search engines. It's almost similar to how SEOs used to think, or excuse me, some SEOs used to think of SEO in the very early days. Honestly, you could get away with nonsense, right? You could rank with the most, spinning articles was a thing back in the day. Just to show how much nonsense you could get away with and rank for just complete gibberish, right? These days, not so much. It's more, the more you understand the intent behind the keywords or what you're trying to target, the better off you are.
100%.
There are clients these days who are not necessarily sure on why they need SEO because they already have organic traffic. So what would you say to a client who comes to you and say, I've been told I need SEO to invest in SEO, but I already have SEO traffic. So why do I need SEO when SEO is free?
Well, I am open-minded enough to say maybe you don't need SEO. Because maybe they don't. Well, maybe they think they don't, and I'd like to know the reasons why they don't think. If they already have organic traffic, it always comes down to, well, what do they want anyway? Like, are they looking to grow? I don't know any business or charity that is not looking to grow. Now, if they are looking to grow, then it's likely that they need SEO. Now, if they are absolutely number one in every single thing, I might start to believe that they don't need SEO. If they have zero technical errors, their content is doing, every time they launch content, it's ranking in the top 1 or 2 every single time. If they launch an above the line campaign or anything else, and people Google a search phrase and they're number 1, then I'm inclined to believe them. So I'd want to know if they are experiencing any of those things. And if they're not, then I would say, well, maybe you do need SEO after all.
Yeah. And unfortunately, in this industry, clients or brands approach SEOs after the fact. So after they've already been, let's say, hit by an algorithm, or they've lost rankings and or visibility somehow, then they start to zero in on SEO. When would you say is the best time for a client or brands to invest in their SEO?
Well, right from the beginning. I mean, even before you build the site, really. You know, that site's got to have content. Well, if you care about traffic from search engines and brand visibility, you need some research to help ensure that your content is going to be visible, and your site is in a position to help search engines include that content, or what we call indexing. Yeah, I mean, just back to your point about algorithm updates and penalties. What's really sad is that a lot of these sites don't even have SERPs tracking in place. So,
Yeah.
You know, it makes it difficult because SEOs don't have a time machine to go back and see what the search results were before and the search results after. It's not impossible, it just makes our job a lot harder. And Google is trying to make it harder. I mean, they released the helpful content update, and then soon after they released the core update. So it makes it just that little bit more challenging to understand the landscape and what it is the algorithm was focusing on in order to generate recommendations that will restore the rankings and then some post update.
With these algorithm updates, let's take the helpful content update. Some brands will look at it and say, this is Google again, once again, trying to jeopardize my business. What do you say to some brands that have the opinion that Google is out to get them, quote unquote, get them?
Well, this is the beauty of Google, is that it's not personal. It's definitely not personal. And Google is not made up of a committee of elitists that decide one day after a pub lunch and several whiskies and bottles of wine who's going to rank top for mortgage and who isn't, etc. So the beautiful thing about SEO and Google is that it's an algorithm, it's a recipe, it's based on a number of factors that help Google determine who deserves to rank and who doesn't. Or, you know, if you think of a ranking as a list of sites that have the best chance of satisfying that search query, second best, third best, etc. You know, it's clearly mathematical, and this is where data science really lends itself really well to solving the SEO problem or the Google problem, which is, you know, what do I need to do in order to get better or restore my rankings? And that's why when I do Google recovery audits, I use machine learning. So what I do is I look at the SERPs and then I collect data on the ranking content, which is like, if you think of a mega spreadsheet with hundreds of columns, each of those columns, let's say for simplicity, first input delay, each of those columns are like a hypothesis. And the great thing about machine learning is that it really speeds up that process of analyzing and testing each of those columns as hypotheses to see whether it can reliably explain the difference in rankings between sites. So, you know, yes, Google makes it harder, and yes, there are a lot more factors, but we have tools now. We have cloud computing, and we have data science, and And all of these tools can help us make sense of Google. And the beautiful thing is, with search tracking tools, we know what the outcome is, because the outcome is public knowledge. So it's definitely not personal.
Yeah.
Is what I could say.
Not at all. So you mentioned data, and how brands really ideally should be tracking a variety of data points.
Yeah.
What areas, without going very detailed, like from an overview point of view, what sort of data should clients be tracking?
Definitely their SERPs as a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be a bit of a LinkedIn social backlash against, you see these like hockey stick charts where SEO consultant came in and then suddenly explosive growth, and that's great. And then you see some snarky comments like, oh, but how valuable is that traffic and blah, 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 blah. But, to win on Google doesn't care about how much money you make or don't make from the search engine. What they do care about is, are you a safe pair of hands when we hand users off to you when they're searching for something? Does your site cover it all? Because the more your site covers, which is why Wikipedia ranks for everything, the more, the higher you're going to rank. And obviously, not all of those visitors will be your target audiences, but a percentage will be a converting customer. So that's why you've got to be in it to win it. And so I've forgotten your original question.
It was around the data and what data should they be covering?
Yeah. So you definitely need to track rankings. I don't think rankings have gone out of fashion. I think, and if you can weight them by search volume, even better. When you look at things like traffic and conversions, but that's great, but don't forget it's all seasonal. Unless you're going to do a kind of rolling 12-month traffic and conversions, or year and year, then do track rankings, do track traffic and conversions. I mean, track it anyway, but I'm saying it has to be contextualized. So what I like about ranking is that, or weighted average rankings, is that it's again a sterile, hygienic reflection of where your site is in Google's eyes. Regardless of seasonality. Yes, there's arguments that your ranking changes because of personalized search and because of seasonality. Well, that's what I hear, but I'm not too convinced by that argument. I do think ranking is the purest, cleanest metric for measuring where your site is in terms of your SEO. Of course, yes, we want to know about ROI from SEO and traffic and conversions and all the rest of it, and that, of course, we do. I think we should also track the number of brand searches, because I think that shows you a truer measure of your authority versus domain authority. If people are searching for your brand, as long as it is a unique brand name and not Payday Loans United or just paydayloans.net, if it is truly a unique brand name, then you know whether your site is increasing in authority or not.
Yeah, completely agreeing. Now, when it comes to implementing SEO recommendations, I think this is an area where I think this is the difference maker with brands, because the recommendations, the analysis, the strategy, all of that is all great, right? But unless it can be implemented, you're not going to see the results needed. However, when it comes to implementing recommendations, SEO recommendations, it requires the different departments, developers, copywriters, etc. How does a brand influence different departments to give a damn about SEO when
Yeah,
individuals don't give a damn about SEO?
yeah. So I think it all comes down to who you're speaking to. In terms of who brands are speaking to. Like, for example, if the digital marketing manager is speaking to the copywriter, I think the copywriter is going to be a little bit more bought in compared to the developers in the IT team.
Hmm.
So I think the easiest way to get people to care is to start with something you both agree with. So you would hope that the developer cares about the site growing in traffic, right?
Hmm.
Because if not, then they're probably in the wrong job. So that's something you can usually start with to get some kind of agreement with the developer, and then that starts the conversation on the right foot. And it's like, okay, well, we both agree that we want the site to grow, we want the business to do better. We've got this recommendation in for the website to help it grow, you know. And yes, you still may face skepticism, but one thing I've noticed is that developers respect numbers. So I guess if you put your argument across,
Hmm.
not that you want to argue, but if you put your case across, starting with what the opportunity is for growth, and you also sort of state any kind of data evidence as to, like, for example, the IT team at Saga, which I'm sure you know quite well,
Hmm.
they wanted to know, what evidence was there that improving CWV was going to increase our rankings. So I did a load of data science work showing the relationship between all the different CWV metrics, such as first input delay, CLS, and with ranking. And I not only showed it for Saga, but also their competitors. So I was able to show that as you decrease the delay for, say, FID, your rankings are higher by 2 positions on average. Now, 2 positions doesn't show much, but as you know, 2 positions is quite a lot across a lot of keywords for a brand.
Hmm.
But they got it instantly, and they were a lot more bought in, and there was a lot more motivation because they could see numbers. It's not because they
Yeah.
hate SEO; it's because that's the way their mind works. They're incredibly empirical in the way they work. Whereas I think a lot of our industry, I'm both an empiricist, as in I like to get data, but I'm also a rationalist. I like thinking experiments as well. And I think,
Mm.
although SEO as an industry is becoming a lot more data driven, I think it started off as a more philosophical rationalist type.
Hmm.
I'm not saying it was all 100% that way, because even 20 years ago, a lot of the best SEOs were testing their ideas as much as possible.
Mm.
But I think we're just now becoming a lot more open to the data science aspect into the way we test things.
Completely agree. And I think early on in SEO industry, we thought or behaved similar to the way copywriters behave, is that we can get things from theorizing about things, right? The
Mm-hmm.
creativity, copywriters, they get it. They just understand it. Whereas developers, they need numbers, as you mentioned, data.
Mm.
And I think to this day, that's probably why we still have a really good relationship with copywriters, whereas developers, we need to do more work with them. And I think sharing SEO data with developers is a big win, especially when it's both brand and competitor data, because then they get it. Developers, developers I've worked with, as you indicated, they're very much numbers, data. Once they see the data, then they see the picture. Copywriters, they can see the picture with a couple of words here and there. They can visualize it. Developers, they need data. And I think the
Yeah.
more brands share SEO data, and in fact, liaise SEO with other departments, the better off they'll be, definitely.
Yeah,
With
absolutely. I mean, as you know, in the agency business, it's all about justification. So the more you can justify with data, the better. And the one thing we all have to remember, I think, as consultants, is that nobody is born with a knowledge of SEO.
True, absolutely. So
They
with
should be, but they're not.
I think as the industry continues to evolve, I think we're getting a lot closer with different departments. I think we're fine with creatives. Right now, I think we're getting better with developers, and I think that's a key area for us. In terms of where SEO fits in the overall digital space, where would you say is best for SEO to sit within digital marketing? Should it be
Yeah,
isolated?
it's a really interesting one. And I was speaking to a CMO the other day about this, and she was saying how strange it is, how you don't really belong in sort of SEO, I mean, in digital or performance marketing, because it's not a case of if you put £10,000 in, you don't get that instant feedback like you would with, say, Google Ads. Whereas, uh, with brand and PR, they don't really like SEO, I don't think. That's been my
They do.
impression.
I'll come to that in a moment, but yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I think they, especially PR, they feel that we're stealing their lunch, certainly on the link acquisition side. So I think, I mean, I know when I was at PhD UK that SEO was then being positioned as a specialist service. So it wasn't really in digital, even though it sat under the head of response media, and it wasn't under, where they didn't do PR. It was a specialist service, and I kind of think that's where it sits. But I do think it could sit under digital marketing if if attribution modeling, multi-channel attribution modeling was in place. Because if you have that attribution modeling, then you can track SEO and then you can see the return. But when you're dealing with startups who don't have that, so yeah, I guess to finally answer the question, SEO is a digital marketing channel. It's just not seen that way. It's seen as a specialist service because of the lack of attribution modeling.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a shame that people still have this idea of SEO, and because of the idea of SEO, they isolate it, and that makes it more difficult to implement SEO within the different departments, and that's a essential aspect of SEO. With digital PR, my experience working with them is they do not want us doing anything that closely resembles what they do. And
Yeah,
to this day, I completely understand. I mean, an SEO link building is a
yeah,
problem for them, not just from a
yeah,
linking point of view, but from a branding point of view. If an
yeah,
SEO contacts a blogger, let's say, to acquire a link, and the digital PR is already in contact with that blogger, it could be a problem. And again, that's one of the reasons why SEO really needs to work closely with different departments. I personally believe that link acquisition should be carried out, and this is just the acquisition part of page SEO, should be carried out by digital PR.
yeah.
What's your view on that?
Yeah,
Acquiring links.
I think digital PR should. I mean, when I do when I work on digital PR campaigns with all of my clients, because a lot of them tend to be startups, especially in the tech sector. So I always say, look, just to take the fear out of it, just ask your PR agency or PR comms agency for an absolute list of publications that we are not allowed to touch.
Mhm.
and then I promise that we will not contact them whatsoever. So that just makes it easy for us both to live side by side and work with the same client. So because PR people, they understand communications, but I don't think they really understand how the internet works. You know, so it's just a very different thing. Their training is different. Like, for example, if you put links in the press release, you know, it would have been considered advertorial 10 years ago. You know, so I think even they're changing, and I think a lot of PR agencies are getting training from SEO companies. I certainly provided SEO training for a PR company because they felt that they were losing out on work to digital PR consultancies or just digital PR offers from companies like mine. So it is changing, but very slowly.
Yeah. Hopefully, the more SEO expands, hopefully, I believe it will work closely with the different departments. I believe it will. I think
Yeah.
we've shown a really good relationship with copy developers. We're getting there. And digital PR. I think that's once we work very closely with digital PR, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, certainly.
Now, when most people think of SEO, they think of Google.
Yeah.
And for a reason, they dominate. However, I came across several articles in recent weeks talking about TikTok and how the
Yeah.
younger generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, I believe it is, are using TikTok more than Google, just for their everyday, you know, how everyday people or elderly people, elderly generation will Google something. The younger generation are using TikTok to find
Yeah.
answers to their queries. Do you think TikTok is a legit threat to Google?
The quick answer is yes. I think it is a legit threat. Do I think it will topple Google? It really depends on whether TikTok will invest the resources like Google has to make their search satisfying to TikTok users. Because if they don't, what's more likely to happen is as TikTok users mature, they'll probably go onto Google and behave like us.
Yeah, I think the variety on Google is still going to dominate over TikTok.
Yeah.
The one thing that does have me believing that TikTok could potentially overtake Google is because the content type these days is pretty much video. There was a time when content was seen as text, copy, right?
Yeah.
These days, the default content type seems to be Google, and that seems to be spread across all the different search intents. People would rather watch a video of how to, I don't know, bake a cake, right? Rather than read an article or read the ingredient list. They would want to see the ingredient list and how to go about doing it.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, TikTok is serving that audience very well, and that young
Yes.
audience growing up. And they seem to be a big threat to YouTube. But Google overall, Google search, I'm not so sure.
100%. Yeah, I do think TikTok are definitely a massive threat to YouTube. Yeah, certainly. It's hard not to see. I mean, even, you know, I think it's highly appropriate for companies to be seen on TikTok, because these young audiences, they're only going to get older, and they probably won't leave TikTok, you know, unless they're too cool for school and something else comes along.
It's very addictive, man. When I got on it in 2020, oh my God, I shouldn't have gotten on it. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
It's so addictive. Now, a lot of SEOs got into SEO via different means, and new SEOs these days get into SEO via formal education. But there is still a large potential of SEOs who go into SEO via a different via different means, and because of that, there is this. Some feel a sense of what's the term? Imposter syndrome, where they're not entirely always confident with what they're doing because they go into SEO without an authoritative blessing, if you like, in form of a formal education. How would you recommend SEOs deal with imposter syndrome if they're facing it?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a lack of confidence, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, if they've had any SEO successes, then they should remind themselves of that immediately. But I think the best way to remove any chance of imposter syndrome coming up very often, I mean, I think we'll always face situations we've never faced before in SEO. But if you've got the foundation experience, you develop what I would call SEO instincts that would serve you well, even for situations you haven't faced. Because if you know how a search engine works, and you know what users want, and you understand the underlying technology, then even though you may not have faced a situation before, that doesn't mean you cannot deliver recommendations that will actually work. I mean, one of my sort of issues, if you like, with people wanting, people that start in SEO is that a lot of them don't start their own blogs or own websites. And can you imagine, you're an SEO, if you imagine you're a driving instructor, and you're telling people how to drive their car or teaching people, but you've never driven a car yourself, then that comes across to me as a little bit rich. So, really, and I see it a lot with SEO execs, especially, some just want it because they heard it's a good job and the money can be quite good. And, you hear all these stories about, a famous one back in the day was Shoe Money, making loads of money from affiliate income. And, everybody has different motivations to get into SEO. But if you want to really learn and master SEO, it's good to do a lot of the theoretical reading, but it won't be enough in my view. You really need to, and as an exec, you're not going to get the experience. People are not going to hand you the lead to sort of make big calls on how to optimize a website. So, the best way to build that confidence and to be a bit more convincing in your team that, you are ready for SEO manager and things like that, is to actually create a website that you care about and optimize it. Optimize for keywords that nobody's heard of, so you can so you've got something pretty easy, and then you can start manipulating. Even better, create several websites and test several theories, so you can test some ideas. Create everything the same, but test one element or multiple elements, so that you can see you can see what works. Because testing is a big part of SEO, but also it helps you accelerates your learning and your experience, so that when you do come to that situation where you would have faced imposter syndrome before, with all that testing and learning, practical experience, as well as the theoretical foundations, you're going to be in a much more confident place.
Completely agree. And SEO, as it continues to grow, you really need to have a passion for it. It's not like
totally.
it's unlike any other channel. So like you said, you really need to have those, ideally a website or several websites that you work on personally. When I was coming up, that is one of the things that actually drove me to becoming an SEO full time, because I was spending so much of my free time just doing different areas of SEO that I didn't even know it was a job, and I wondered, is SEO a thing?
Yeah.
And then that was like my proper introduction into the SEO industry, knowing that it's actually a thing, because it felt I was just on my own doing it in my room, and then after some time it was like, okay, let me see if I can actually make a living from this. And then it came across that this is actually an industry, and you could be a part of it if you're spending pretty much your full time on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, life's too short to do a job you hate. I think that's the one thing. And secondly, we all have ups and downs, and, if you're passionate about something, then that carries you through the tougher days.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you think the industry is headed?
Certainly on an enterprise level, I think we're going to see a lot more automation apps on content delivery networks. So we're going to see automated apps that fix redirects, and they will know where to redirect URLs from. So I think that's quite exciting. We'll also see apps that are able to rewrite title tags. So using GSC data. So I think that's where I see SEO heading on the enterprise level, and obviously whatever happens at enterprise eventually will filter down to the not-haves. The sort of businesses that can't afford a full-time SEO team, let alone a full-time SEO manager.
Yeah, I think I can see that happening. In fact, it's something that I've seen already. I would also add to that as the channel expands, the need to work with different teams, departments will increase. So awareness of SEO, understanding the fundamentals and how search engine work will need to be spread across non-SEOs. I think any and everyone that has a touch point with our website needs a fundamental, a basic understanding of how search works, because they can then 100%. See that, okay, what they do impacts SEO, and what impacts SEO impacts the website, and what impacts the website impacts revenue.
Yeah, of course. 100%.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, Andreas, where can people find you online?
On my website and on LinkedIn. So my website is artios.io. That's artios.io. And if you type my name in, I'm on LinkedIn.
You're on LinkedIn as well. I'll be sure to link to both on the description under the video.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your...
It's been fun.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when I've got a publishing deal for my book, Data-Driven SEO. I'll
nice.
send you a copy.
Yes, please. Yes. So, is it this side of Christmas or?
No. Well, I think the publisher would like it to be this side of Christmas. I personally think that's a little bit optimistic, because we have to test all the Python code and make sure it works as intended, etc. So probably the other side of Christmas, but earlier.
H1 of next year.
Yes, I would hope so. Yeah, definitely H1 for sure.
Brilliant. Well, I'll have you back and we can discuss it. It'll be an interesting read, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, I think if you're not in SEO, it will be a great cure for insomnia.
I think a lot of people will relate to SEO in different ways, more so than SEOs would realize, I think.
Yeah.
So yes, we'll do this again in the new year.
Perfect.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Andreas. You have a good afternoon.
And you.
Cheers. Bye now.
Bye.